Hello, and welcome to What Are You Wearing? I'm your host, David Hughes. Today we have appearances from the 1920s to the early 2000s. Enjoy the show. Hello, Giancarlo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the show. We're here with Giancarlo, who is currently representing the 1920s era. Giancarlo, a couple questions for you, if you don't mind. What does your attire represent?
My attire represents high status living. It also was supposed to represent the style of music that revolutionized that time period.
Question 2 for you, Giancarlo. How has music influenced your fashion?
The Jazz Age gave an edgier take on life, reflecting brightness of good times.
Question 3. Who developed this new look?
I think that the younger generation during the 1920s created this style to reflect their rebellious ideas.
Question 4. What effect does social classes have on fashion during this time?
Well, social classes carried some trends according to their income. However, no man went without a hat.
Giancarlo, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
But before you leave, what are you wearing? Our next guest is Mina Gurgis, representing the 1940s. Welcome back. Mina, just a couple questions for you. What effect did World War II have on fashion during this time?
Styles signified darkness during this time. There were many clothing rations that limited available trends and types of cloth.
Question number 2. Was there any diversity in style during this time?
Social class wasn't really affected during this time because all of us were in times of depression.
Last question, question 3. What jobs were around at this time, and how did that change the way you dressed?
While most jobs during this time included middle-class market owners and small businesses, but due to food and supply shortages, clothing did not signify any significant concepts.
Well, 1940s is a wrap. Mina Gurgis, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Before you leave, the audience wants to know, what are you wearing?
I shake, I move, that's right, the girl get hot. Okay.
The next segment on the show is 1950s. Joe John will be representing the 1950s. Joe John, welcome to the show. Welcome, Joe John. Question number 1. After World War II, when the economy was out of the Depression, what effect did the economic boom have on this time? More styles of clothing became evident during this time. Also, the styles reflected people's views on what was happening. Question 2. What purpose did fashion pay attention to at this time? Fashion represented one person's place in society as well as a person's identity. Question 3. What did fashion influence? Fashion influenced conformity. Fourth and final question. How was social class better defined through fashion? Social class was defined through pattern and style. It also reflected a person's identity. That was Joe John, 1950s. Once again, Joe John, thanks for coming on the show. What are you wearing? Welcome back to What Are You Wearing? We have Brandon Heap coming in to represent the 1960s and 1970s. Brandon, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. Couple questions for Brandon here. How did fashion styles change during this time?
Well, during this time, the new look generation had taken over, defeating the old look generation, including suits and ties.
Question 2. How did the Vietnam War impact society at this time?
The Vietnam created a newer version of counterculture, which evolved into a group called hippies.
Third and final question. Did certain styles of clothing affect the economy at all?
There was no great effect on economies, but their views and looks influenced whether or not they would get jobs.
That was Brandon the Cambo Heap, representing the 1960s and 1970s. Brandon, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Before you leave, the audience wants to know, what are you wearing? Welcome back to the show. What are you wearing? Tyler Champagne and Claudio Marcello Giancarlo Orsini will both be representing the 1980s and 1990s. Question one for you fellas. What was the idea behind the fashion at this time?
The idea behind this fashion was to be diverse and stand out from all the others.
Question for you fellas. Were there any main celebrities or main people who influenced this new style?
Yes, there actually were. Madonna and Michael Jackson influenced heavily through their shows and music.
Third and final question for you fellas. Does this style of fashion still have a lasting effect on today's society?
Well, actually, yes, that's a great question. Actually, brand names that were in the 90s are actually coming back as a retro look.
That was Tyler Champagne, Claudio Marcello Giancarlo Orsini, representing the 1980s and 1990s. Before you gentlemen leave, show us what you're wearing.
Shake that.
Our next segment on What Are You Wearing is the representation of the 2000 and 2010 era. Konstantinos Rafaelgakidis will be representing this time period. Question one. What were the main representatives and highlights from this time?
Well, I'd say the main highlight of our time is the revolution of music and the style of clothing.
Two. What does the clothing of today represent?
Well, clothing today represents more of our personality and not really our social class.
Question three. Does the clothing affect business and the economy?
I'd like to think so because fashion also influences the type of worker we are, and in this time we could be more casual yet more comfortable.
Fourth and final question. Due to this increase in diverse fashion, has there been any noticeable schisms between certain groups?
Well, with the much variety of fashion in this time era, it enables many people to be part of their own group, whether it be the wealthy, the hardworking, even the teenage.
Thanks again to Costa for coming in representing the 2000 and 2010 era. Before you leave, please show everybody what you're wearing.
Every time I come in and I step up in the building and we let the fire sizzle. Hope you know we gotta run on, cause you gotta know that when we get it started, whenever I'm in the spot.
That's the conclusion of our show today. Thank you for tuning into What Are You Wearing? That's all the time we have. I bid you good luck, farewell, see you next time.
Con los terroristas.
And do the Harlem Shake.
Con los terroristas.
High quality living, and also supposed to represent the fashion of music and how red line. Oh my god.
A few questions for you. What is your attire reference? Are you have a fashion for this time?
Oh, stop.
Thanks for coming on the show. Thank you. Before you leave. Question one for you fellas. Our next segment will be the 2000 to 2010 era. Okay, no. Our next segment is the 2000 to 2010 era. The person who will be representing this style of clothing was current Defender of the Year. He recently celebrated Greek Easter. Give it up for Constantine.